Hello and welcome. Lizards, am I right?
Basilisks have been nicknamed the Jesus Christ lizard. Why? The basilisk is called the Jesus Christ lizard because it can walk, well, really run on water.
On flat ground, a baby iguana can outrun a racer snake.
It has inside bone, it has nerves and muscle, and it can even wiggle. In fact, it's perfect. Now we're going to cut it off.
Okay, so when you think of a reptilian comic character, most of the time people think about Kirk Connors, or better known as the Lizard. Or if you watched the Andrew Garfield movies, you'll know him as reverse Pinocchio. But what about the ones that everyday normal swines don't normally think of? So this Valentine's Day, I want to give you the cold-blooded creatures the warmth they need. So let's roll into the video in 3, 2, 1.
Subscribe to Something Z, and hit the bell button to get notifications whenever this loser uploads.
Okay, so let's begin this with a character that I actually knew a lot about thanks to rainy mornings before school, with me sitting by the TV 2 inches away from the screen, trying to catch a case of blindness to the extent of a bag of rice, with me either watching My Little Pony, or the classic Marvel show that had spin-offs, and also its own online game that I played for hours. And if you're a nerd or a zoomer like me, you'll know I'm talking about Superhero Squad. So let me talk about Humberto Lopez, or better known as the T-Rex boy Reptil, who either gained or activated his powers after him and his parents discovered a fossilized amulet during a dig, with his parents suddenly disappearing one day, with him having to stay with his grandfather in Nevada. And with the amulet, after getting into a rock slide, he was able to run away, with him not noticing until he was safe from danger that he had turned his legs into those of a velociraptor. And with the power of the amulet, he was originally able to turn different parts of his body into dinosaur parts, such as turn his arms into pterodactyl wings or limbs of a velociraptor, or just gain a stegosaurus tail. But as he got better with his powers, he was able to get more transformations. And after getting a power boost from Hank Pym, he was given the ability to change his actual size. So he can either become the mosquito from Jurassic Park, or he can become a giant T-Rex. Also, he's able to form a mental link with dinosaurs, so he can feel their emotions and become sort of a dinosaur therapist if he really wanted to. With the only true downside that being, 1, he has to stay with the amulet, which means that he has to keep it on him at all times, which later doesn't become a problem when the amulet gets infused into his body. And number 2, he can lose himself into his dinosaur transformations, with every time he transforms having a chance that he becomes feral. And with his abilities, Reptil has gone through many adventures, such as at one point he was tortured for months by Norman Osborn, using the kid's lost parents as bait into luring him into a trap. He's also known for joining the Avengers Academy along with other characters such as Lyra and Butterball, and many other characters that honestly I think should deserve their own video. And during his time at the Academy, he had to deal with his own time travel problems, with a future version of himself getting sent to his body with the goal to kill some students in order to beat a villain named Hybrid. But instead of doing a tragedy that would end up on the news, they decided to team up, with him being able to win the fight against Hybrid this time. And after this, Reptil has had other cameos and appearances in other comics and series, such as the King in Black storyline, with him and Spider-Man teaming up to help people in New York after a quick scuffle. But besides from that, Reptil has been mainly out of the public eye, with us having no information about him getting his own solo run anytime soon. And it's basically the ancient hero Reptil. Okay, so it's meme time, with our next being the dinosaur that took its name from the Lord of the Rings, and is the pterodactyl villain Sauron, or better known as Dr. Carl Lycos, who after going on an adventure in Antarctica with his dad, along with a physician named Dr. Anderson as well as his daughter Tanya, got bit by a pterodactyl human hybrid, that he was able to scare away after getting bit by using the power of a stick. And if you're confused about what just happened in the past 10 seconds, the creature that just bit him was a pteron. Also, side note here, in the lands of Antarctica in the Marvel Universe, there's a place known as the Savage Lands, which is a tropical place in the Antarctic, because an alien named Nuwali created a land preserve during the time of the dinosaurs and put different species in there for the Beyonders, but they never touched it for reasons. So as the millions of years went by while the Earth aged and progressed, this land stayed in prehistoric times, with things such as dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, and even prehistoric people, such as the land's protector, Marvel's version of Tarzan, or better known as Khazar. Anyways, enough from the whole lore dump that felt like an hour. After Carl was able to survive the bite, and after making the pterodactyl flee, Carl continued on with his life, with him having to live with his dad's friend after his father died in the expedition. But one thing I forgot to mention was that the bite changed Carl Jacobs, and that gave him the ability to drain life energy, but it came with the caveat that he needs to drain people's energy in order to survive, with his victims first being a dog named Jagger, and just other random people, with him not killing any of them, but in the process he heavily weakened them. Anyways, as the years passed, he was able to get a doctorate with him becoming a hypnotherapist, but as he got older, the more he needed to drain energy in order to survive, with him even resorting to draining his patient's life force. But you may be wondering, how did this man turn into a pterodactyl? Well, when he was in college, he met Charles Xavier, leader of the X-Men, with the two of them working on a project called Project Mutant, with that not really being important besides the fact that he has connection to the X-Men, or just mutants in general. Anyways, during a fight between the X-Men and the Sentinels, a mutant by the name of Havoc, who had the ability of energy manipulation, got seriously injured, with him being on the brink of death. So the X-Men brought him to Carl, who knew that Havoc was a mutant, and knew that he wouldn't have any problems with that. But while he was in his care, Carl drained the life force of Havoc. But it came with a cost, because since this was the first time that he drained the life of a mutant, Carl experienced a side effect, with it being a transformation, with him turning into a pterodactyl human hybrid, with the transformation warping its personality, with him turning evil. And I know I made a joke about it in the beginning of talking about him, but that's actually how he got his name. With the first thing he wanted to do after becoming a dinosaur was name himself after a Lord of the Rings character, like a nerd. Okay, I know this was complicated already, but I don't think you understand the absurdity of this flying reptile. Because later, he was put into the Reformed Weapon X program, and not only in the program was he a stalker for months, he also was experimented on, with that affecting not only his mind, with him becoming more aggressive and slightly less of a nerd, but he gained even more abilities, with him not only getting energy absorption, he got the ability to shoot out energy blasts from his hands. And now that I'm talking to you about this power, let me just explain to you his abilities in general. And as you can assume from his beautiful physique, he has super strength, ability of flight, claws and a mighty beak, flame breath, and hypnosis. So not only does he have energy blast, he can shoot out flames from his mouth like a dragon, and his hypnosis is based on his eyes, with his opponents having to look him in the eyes for him to be able to affect them. And over the years, he has been a villain, with him not only fighting the X-Men, but he also fights the likes of Spider-Man, with him partnering up with Stegron from time to time. And speaking of which, okay, so who is Stegron? His name was Vincent Stegron, and he worked with a more well-known lizard called the Lizard, or Kirk Connors, and a project for S.H.I.E.L.D., with him studying dinosaur tissue samples that were given to them by Kazar, and after becoming obsessed with the experiment that turned Kirk Connors into a lizard, Vincent stole the sample, and after mixing the lizard formula and the dinosaur DNA, he turned himself into a dinosaur-human hybrid, with him taking the appearance of a humanoid orange spike from the land before time. And I gotta say, this is a villain that I truly feel bad for a decent portion of time, because most of the time when this guy gets defeated, it seems to be in the most horrible ways, and it shows that no one really cares about him. Take for example his first appearance when he fought Spider-Man and the Black Panther, and after saying he couldn't win the fight, he tried to fly away on a pterodactyl, but while he was mid-flight, he got hit off the flying creature, with it falling into the water below and sinking like a rock, with the two heroes just straight up leaving him, with him having to lower his metabolism and being on the brink of death until months later in real time. And after kidnapping Billy, Kirk Connors' son, he created a ray to reanimate dinosaur skeletons. But after fighting a lizard Kirk Connors, he fell victim to the cold, because he decided to strike during the winter, with him at the end of the fight falling into a frozen lake and sinking into the water, not to be seen again for some time, with him surviving this confrontation and returning back to human, but now he's just homeless in the park. And he stayed like this until he gets hit by a nuclear blast by the Vulture, reverting him back into a dinosaur. And this keeps going on, with Stegron losing time and time again, with people exploiting not only his weakness to the cold, from him being a cold-blooded lizard, but also the fact that he can't freaking swim. And his powers are what you typically expect from a creature like him, with him having the whole superhumans thing, such as increased durability, strength, reflexes, etc. But he also has the ability to mentally control reptiles, with him being able to manipulate dinosaurs around him. So if there's just a dinosaur just hanging out in New York, be afraid, because Stegron can make them fly at you. And if you're lucky, you may get bit and turn to a life-draining dinosaur-human hybrid that names itself after the Hobbit. Also, speaking of that, he also has life force absorption, with the only caveat being that he has to be very close to the person he wants to drain. But he still can. Also, he can manipulate the part of the human brain, but only the part of it that's the lizard part of the brain. So it can only affect the human brain and the parts that are lizards. Yeah, just yeah. Okay, I can't end this video about lizards and reptiles and not talk about the most famous cold-blooded creature in the Marvel Universe. And you may know them from their appearances on the big screen and their giant scaly skin. And the creature I'm talking about is Godzilla, which at one point was in the Marvel Universe. And let me explain. During the years of 1977 and 1979, Marvel Comics published a 24-issue run of Godzilla in the series Godzilla King of the Monsters, written by Doug Moench and drawn by Herb Trimpe, with the comics being of Godzilla roaming around the Marvel Universe with him fighting different people, with him at points taking on the likes of the Champions, the Fantastic Four, and even the Avengers at the time, with Marvel at one point even owning the comic book rights to Godzilla, with that being from February 1979 to July 1979. But even when they did not own the rights to Godzilla, they still used the giant creature. such as when he gets mutated by a character from the Godzilla series known as Dr. D, and he gets his appearance changed just enough where he would no longer look like his normal self, and avoid an even bigger threat than Godzilla. Copyright. With Iron Man then having to fight the newly mutated lizard. And after Iron Man 193, Godzilla would then only be referenced and appear from time to time in the Marvel Universe, with Dark Horse Comics taking the reins to the Godzilla comic book line. With me thinking with Marvel no longer being able to use a character, they had to add a new Reptile. So in 2015 they created Todzilla, or better known as the American Kaiju, where he's an American patriotic giant lizard who gained his appearance after being a subject in an experiment called Project Troubleshooter, which was an attempt to create the super soldier serum, with the only downside being that he's literally just a giant lizard that has no special abilities besides just being a giant lizard. But the funniest thing is, when I was doing research on this guy, you know how there's quotes on their fandom pages? Well, his quote is literally him just shouting, USA. And that's basically it from this video. There are plenty more reptiles in the Marvel Universe, and I didn't even talk about the dinosaur that's from a different universe and has a bond with a small girl, and also a bond with like a monkey kid named Moonboy. But I'll save that for another time, and I hope you enjoyed this Valentine's Day special. And while you may either be having a romantic dinner with your significant other, or you're crying on the side of your bed after watching your 5th binge of How I Met Your Mother, I hope you remember these reptile abominations. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.
That's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more, click on the video to true left.